Today, I've put together a list of 3 obscure games that you probably haven't thought about in years to play through with Retro Achievements. Now, I'm not saying that these games I've chosen today are that out of the ordinary, but the reason I chose them is because in the achievement hunting world, these are games that people would rarely think of completing. The first 2 are strange DS ports, Doodle Jump and Poptropica. Then the last game I'm looking at today is the Game Boy Advance port of SpongeBob SuperSponge, which is mainly a PS1 game. And to master these games, I'm gonna have to get to know them a lot, so let's lock in for a bit. While Doodle Jump is mostly known for being a mobile game, it surprisingly had a Nintendo DS port, which I guess makes sense considering the DS is also a touchscreen based console. But to my shock, this port barely uses the touchscreen capabilities. I assumed before starting that you would use the stylus to move the Doodler. Yes, that's his name. But you actually use the D-pad. The only thing the stylus is good for is starting the game and also shooting rocks out of your schnauzer. This set boasts a modest 12 achievements that are quite simple in premise. I'm gonna need to grab every power-up, set a score of 25,000 on each level theme, then defeat 10 enemies in one go, and finally set a score of 50,000 or higher on any stage. Don't blink, because this may be the fastest 3 achievement combo anyone has gotten. I started my run, hopped up a bit, hit a couple springs here and there, then I warped from one side of the screen to another, then hit a jetpack, which basically soared me right into a shield power-up, all granting me an achievement. This first attempt went pretty well. I hadn't played Doodle Jump in God knows how long, so I had to get used to it again. I ended up losing with a score of 20,000, pretty close to our classic mode 25k achievement. So I hopped right back in for another go, quickly got another achievement for using the propeller hat power-up, and doodled my way up. I guess I can briefly describe what's going on here a bit since, well, this game is very simple. You have a few different platform types, enemy types, and power-up types that make up the gameplay loop of this here game. For platforms, we have the classic green, which are completely stable, broken platforms which break on impact, general moving platforms, shifting platforms which move around after each hop, vanishing white platforms that go away after landing, orange disintegrating ones, and then these holographic ones that move to a new spot after each jump. Then for enemies, you have general monsters, UFOs, and holes in the paper that suck you right up. That's about it. So while I was explaining that, I got the 25k on classic, so I could move on to jungle. Not much to say other than it's just a reskin of classic for the most part. Although I did end up getting the spring shoes during my first run here, which got me an achievement, and then also this stopwatch, which in all of my time playing, I only managed to come across this one time, which was strange. Then it was a score of 25k here, and I could move on to the final theme, space. And wouldn't you know it, it's another reskin. This time though, the different platform types are pretty indistinguishable, so it was slightly harder. Nothing I couldn't handle though. I did get this super hard enemy pattern, but then I found this rocket ship. Then it was an easy 25k. So now I've been playing for 18 minutes and have 10 out of the 12 achievements in this set, but these last 2 would prove to be a little bit tougher. Like I said earlier, I need to defeat 10 enemies in a run and also get a score of 50k, which is double anything we needed to do before. As we get up higher in these attempts, platforms become more scarce and enemies can be more erratic and placed in hard positions. It was at this point I realized I could actually use the stylus to shoot rocks at enemies in the event they were in the way. You know, a core game mechanic. I mean, in my defense though, I didn't read the manual and it never really was a problem until now. This kind of added an extra layer of difficulty though. Trying to manage my movement along with aiming at the enemies was kind of tough, but I'm addicted to Valorant and this was just like playing a shooter, so I caught on quick. By the way, I chose to go back to the classic theme here because, well, you can easily see everything and all the platforms are distinct, so it's way easier. But still, it took me quite a bit of time to get some good runs going. But on the same attempt that I defeated 10 enemies, I also got a score of 50,000 to master this set. I actually got to 79,000. Overall, I give this set a 6 out of 10. But to be fair, the developers of this set didn't have much variety to work with. I suppose we could have gotten 50k achievements for each level, then maybe made that high score one all the way up at 100k. Especially because as you drive past 50k, there are these number markings on the side, which shows that the developers intended for you to go higher. But that might have been too much of a commitment for a throwaway game like this. Oh, by the way, before I go into the next game, I want a shameless self-plug really fast. At 5,000 subscribers, I'm going to do the bonus set for Super Mario 64, and it's very hard. So subscribe. And while you do that, like and comment. Thanks. I definitely was not expecting Poptropica to be as fun as it was. I'd played a little bit of Poptropica online when I was younger, so I had some idea of what I was getting myself into here. I don't know why, but I was expecting an extremely watered down version of the game. In some ways I was right, and in some ways I wasn't. The problem with Poptropica Adventure for the DS isn't the quality of the game, but the quantity of things to do. I booted up the game, made my extremely upset character Rough Noodle, and began. The story of this game centers around a dilapidated dedicated museum. For some reason, the owner has put the dreadful job of putting the exhibits back together to us while he does some sweeping. This is where the quantity thing comes into play. We have an option of 3 islands to explore, which have bite-sized stories for us to play through. These islands are fun, but extremely short, and like I said, there are only 3, so the game's pretty quick. I should also mention that the achievements are mostly centered around getting all of the outfits and exhibit pieces for helping out the inhabitants of these islands. Then a few are for high scores in the arcade you unlock at the end. The first island I went to was Superhero Island, where we have this nerd comic book store owner, Ned Noodlehead, who had 3 of his favorite comic books stolen from his store. And it's up to us to find them, find out who did it, and bring the world to justice. But first, I played the minigame with this dude, where I had to bring a helicopter through a maze 3 times with the stylus, which by the way, would have been really hard, but I bought this drawing pad recently because I thought I wanted to draw, but I didn't. So now I am getting use out of it. For doing that, I got an outfit and an artifact, then started to try and find the 3 comic books. The first thing I did was go into the sewer and do this ooze pipe minigame. Then I glitched, talked to this criminal, and I have no idea what he said, but after I talked to him, there were 6 rats for me to collect. So I did that. So once I did, he gave me one of the 3 comic books, another artifact for the museum, and I was on my way to find the other 2 comic books. For the next one, I found this super villain at the top of this tower who wanted me to catch 20 tomatoes for some reason. I did that, and then was told that a pink-haired villain robbed the comic book store. Then I did a parkour minigame to get to the top of another building where there was another evil villain who liked to throw things. This time I had to dodge 99 statues. He gave me an artifact and then the last comic book. So I went back to the store owner, who complains that the comics are sticky now. I went inside and talked to the detective, who said he has a picture of the culprit, but it got ripped up into 4 pieces, so I needed to collect them. Instead, I found this cat and tried to give it to a woman who lost her cat. Turns out this is the wrong one, and the right one was right here. Then I found the 4 ripped pieces around Main Street, gave them to the detective, who gave me a letter of recommendation to join the superhero league, talked to this old superhero who gave me a superhero card, which gave me access to the sewer. But the guard who was outside the sewer was hungry, so I brought him a hot dog and a pretzel. I got into the sewer, found the pink-haired villain, raced her, won, and then just when I thought things seemed to be over, a plot twist of the century happened, where I found out that the villain is Ned Noodlehead's sister, who was just jealous. And then we lived happily ever after. Well, but before I was done, I talked to this journalist who wanted to interview me, getting me the last costume in Superhero Island for an achievement, and then went back into the museum, filled out all of the superhero exhibit for another achievement, and moved on to the next island. As you can see, each island is kind of a wild goose chase fetch quest, but it's pretty engaging, so I'm not complaining. The next island I went to was Astro Knight's Island, which is pretty flippin' sweet. Over here, we find out that the king of this area has been acting weird after getting visited by a stranger. So I went over to investigate. Climbing through this window, I talked to the queen and then took a look at the king, who has clearly been replaced with a robot. The Red Knight told me that the visitor had taken a rocket to space, but in order to go ourselves, we need to repair this old rocket by finding a fuel cell, wrench, and an electrical panel, which I found laying around the island. This took way longer than I would like to admit, by the way. After that, I was told I need a map in order to navigate, which was easy enough, and it was off into space. I had to do this maze minigame again, then I was on the moon, which is just a landing spot for us to teleport to the lava planet and the jungle planet. Since the teleporter is broken to jungle, I can only go to lava for now. Here, the squire from Earth was being kept. He told me I needed to get the King's Spectre back from the throne room, so back down it was, got the Spectre, then back up it was. The Spectre also doubled as a tool for Mr. Alien to fix the teleporter, but also now I needed wire, which I had to go back to Earth for, talk to this kid, go back up again, and now I could go to jungle. I had to face a Robo Squire who made me race against a giant bird, then hopped over to save the king. But of course, I wasn't done yet. I had to do parkour, which apparently trapped the bad dude in a crystal palace, and I was done with the main story here. I helped out a couple of civilians, got the achievement for every outfit, and the same for all of the exhibit pieces. I will say, Astro Knights took me the longest because of all of the backtracking. It was an absolute disaster. It was on to the final of the 3 islands, Mythology Island. This one was by far my favorite, but we're spending a lot of time on this game, so let's speedrun through this. Hermes lost his hat. He thinks he can't deliver letters anymore, so sure, we'll do it. The first one is for Poseidon, who is inside his temple. But one issue, there's a waterfall blocking the way. That's fine, we turn the water off. Now inside, we need to be able to play the sound of the seas. Well, good thing we found this flute. Oops, well, we can't use it. But I know of a centaur that can. He traded the flute for magic musical shell, which allowed me to get into Poseidon's throne room and deliver the letter. Then Hermes wanted to deliver to Hades, please. I went across the river Styx, helped Hades make a cure for Cerberus, then went back to Hermes again, who wanted us to deliver a final letter to Artemis, who is in the forest. I found her quickly, but for some reason she can't read the letter unless we find her 6 missing arrows around town here, which weren't too bad to find. Once I did, Artemis wanted to help me get Hermes' hat back from a deer, but he's too scared to come near us. So I went to this vendor over here, traded a fish for cabbage, and I was able to get Hermes' hat back. I gave it to him, Zeus got mad for some reason, then I raced him, then raced Hermes, helped this girl with a pearl, and finally help a girl who lost her satchel in the underworld for the full outfits for Mythology Island and every art installation. Now we've completed all of the completion achievements of this set, but the old man who put us on this quest built us an arcade with a bunch of mini games we did along the way. For 6 of these last 8 achievements, I needed to get high scores set by the developers on all of these mini games, and some of them were quite hard. The first one though was the dodging mini game, where I needed to get a score of more than 140, which I almost doubled on my first try. Then I had to do the water pipe mini game, which was surprisingly hard. You need to do a bunch of these puzzles in a row in order to get a score of over 4,800, which is hard because in the arcade version of this, the pipes are actually a bit more complicated and you need to be able to finish quickly. I found that starting from the end and working my way back towards the front helped out a bit. Then I had to do a racing mini game where if I got hit, it was completely over. You score points by dodging obstacles. This was really a consistency challenge because you were awarded like 10 points usually per obstacle, and I needed a score of over 1,200. But in the end, it wasn't so bad. Next was parkour, which was kind of similar to the last. If I got hit, it was over for me. So I needed to play quickly and carefully. I had to get a score of more than 1,200 here again. It only took me a handful of tries. Hey wait, this reminds me of something. Then I had to do the Hermes challenge again, needing to catch over 60 without letting too many drop, which was also easy. I left this helicopter one for last because the comments on the Retro Achievement set said this was the roadblock for many people. And I could see why. You need to get a score of over 6,000 in this minigame. And as we know, you need to be precise as you navigate your way through the mazes. You have a missile following suit, and with each stage, it gets faster and faster, and the stage tends to get more complicated. By the time you're on the 5,000 mark, you have almost zero room for error. And on the last stage you need to beat for this achievement, you have none at all. This rocket moves fast, and I needed to get to this stage time after time after time until eventually I was able to get through just barely for this last arcade achievement. At this point, I thought I was done, but there were 2 more very quick achievements left. Apparently, there are 2 costumes you need to get with a cheat code, and thank God for this forum post because I wouldn't have known what the code was. With that, Poptropica Adventure for the DS has been mastered in 2 hours and 43 minutes. I give this set an 8 out of 10. You see everything there is to see and have some tough high score challenges. Let's move on to the last game. SpongeBob games aren't inherently obscure, so I'm kind of stretching the definition here. SpongeBob SuperSponge for the Game Boy Advance seems to have sold pretty well. I'm sure that a ton of people watching this video have played the game themselves, but the reason I'm playing this game for Retro Achievements is because, well, why would you? It's not one of the more memorable SpongeBob games in my opinion. This game follows Bob here as we try to get the best birthday present ever for Patrick. His idea is to get a signed picture of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, but when we go to ask them, well, they kind of send SpongeBob on a ton of errands. To be honest, the gameplay isn't really anything special. It's your run-of-the-mill platformer skinned like SpongeBob. The physics at times are a bit clunky and it's super short in general, but nevertheless, there is still some fun to be had. Our achievement set has us beating all of the game's levels with no password usage for the final one, using all of the game's power-ups, getting 10 lives at once, and some other miscellaneous stuff along the way, like collecting 500 spatulas and seeing all of SpongeBob's idle animations. Here we are in Bikini Bottom, and today we'll be following my favorite creature, SpongeBob SquarePants, on his adventure around Bikini Bottom. Blah blah blah. Get Patrick a gift. Whoa, what the heck is this trippy screen? I think I'm gonna puke. So the first stage is Jellyfish Fields. So naturally, SpongeBob has Jump and Karate Chop as his main moves. But you can collect other items along the way that give Bob some other powers. This game is honestly super simple, especially considering there are healing items around every single corner. So you can just damage boost your way through levels. Interestingly, Stage 2 is probably the most unique level in the game. It takes place inside of Sandy's tree dome, and you need to soak up water every so so often so you don't shrivel up. This is the only time a mechanic like this is introduced in the game. And also, this is the only level that is mostly vertical platforming. I imagine that this was the inspiration for games like Jump King, because I wanted to absolutely tear the ever-loving shit out of my hair every time I fell to the bottom. Stage 3 had this pit I kept falling in, which brought me further from the 10 lives achievement, but really it was a skill issue. But I did make up some of that failure when I grabbed this one up. Stage 4 is the last one in chapter 1. By the way, this is my favorite enemy in the game. I swear it's just like some person who must be scared out of their mind because of everything going on around them. Poor thing. This level features a giant jellyfish boss at the end. I use a jellyfish net in order to capture and reuse jellyfish as projectiles to beat this boss. It got very close towards the end. I was only at 1 hit, but I made it through for the first achievement of this set. I brought Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy a sandwich they asked for, but that somehow wasn't enough for an autograph. So now they sent me off to, I guess, get face cream? I don't know. The only thing of note about chapter 2 stage 1 is that this is the first time we get to use the coral blower, which unlocks an achievement. You can suck up coral, then shoot it back out at enemies. As far as I can tell, you can only hold 1 coral at a time, so I found it to be pretty useless. Unless I was required to use it, then it did have a use. Then in the next level, I got to use the balloon power-up, which has you fall way slower, sometimes. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but it felt like half the time I was super floaty, and the other half of the time, I felt like a damn rock. Wait a second, at the end of this level we collect a sponge. What makes this sponge sentient and this one not? Nothing of note really happened in level 3, but by the time I was in level 4, I had 9 lives, so I only needed 1 more in order to unlock another achievement. I searched far and wide for some underpants, and I found some in this lava section. And thank the Lord above that I did, because this part over here was the single hardest section of the entire game. We aren't even halfway through yet. I think I was being far too hasty, but I died like 5 times over here. I just kept jumping into this fire. Oh my god, what is that? The boss for World 2 is this terrifying robotic anglerfish. To attack him, you just gotta karate chop his big mouth when he goes in for a chomp. Took me a couple of tries, but I won. That is amazing. How did you manage that? Reflecto's got nothing on you, kid. You must really love your friend Trevor. Patrick. Okay, so now they want new uniforms, so they're sending us to go back to prehistoric Bikini Bottom? I don't understand the correlation, but okay. Yo, this is the time machine from the future episode. I love this game. In this stage, we get the jellyfish launcher. SpongeBob always stays strapped. I don't know. Things aren't too interesting from level to level here. Every once in a while, we get access to a new power-up, like the bubbles, which serve as platforms. But the worst part, especially about this world, is that there isn't much differentiating each level. They all have this super similar theme and platforming styles. But I do really think that this game is a nice love letter to SpongeBob fans. The last level in this world is the most interesting. It's kind of like the Chrome world. The runtime of this one is super short, but this boss is, the hell is that? This worm snake creature is pretty tough to take out, but you chop it whenever you can until you brute force your way through. Remember, there's a full health restoring burger here in the fight, so it should be easy. So now we've gotten on the superhero's nerves over here, so they're sending me through these dangerous stages for a kelp bar. At this point, we get a little more interesting with the level design, which is nice. The stages now have us going left, right, up, down, and around more often, but man, there really is nothing to say here. It's just jumping. World 4's boss is the Flying Dutchman, which is awesome because he's a cool reoccurring character. Whack, 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 whack him in the face, get an achievement, and now we're on to the last world. Whoa, this is really creepy. SpongeBob now finds out that these two knuckleheads have a broken TV. So we take it upon ourselves to fix it for them. We need to get the tools, and maybe finally we can make Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy happy for once in their long, long lives. This stage is awesome because it is an oil version of Jellyfish Fields. I love to see my nature ecosystems being destroyed by man-made things. Also great that there's food everywhere, so I can just basically tank all the damage in the world. Pipe World is dope, a lot of tight platforming here, and Space Level is also really cool, only because we're wearing a really poorly fitting astronaut helmet on our head. After I grab this wrench, this horrifying creature falls from the sky. Evil Doggy here is like the rest of the bosses. Just punch him in the face while he spams attack. And with that, we've gotten the achievement for beating the whole game without using passwords. Mermaid Boy and Barnacle Brain finally are grateful for the work we've done, so they give us the signed picture. Now we can finally attend Patrick's party. Wait, where is he? He's nowhere to be found. Why is everyone looking at me? Am I Patrick? That was a pretty short and sweet game. Took about an hour. But I'm not 100% done yet. Like I said earlier, there are some miscellaneous challenges. The last 2 achievements I need are for collecting 500 spatulas and also basically standing still for a few seconds. Since I was collecting as many spatulas as I could throughout the whole game, I was pretty sure I was close to getting that Chivo. So I just played through the start of the game until it popped. It didn't take too long at all, and then I stood still for a few seconds and I was done. I gotta say, these achievements are like a 4 out of 10. But once again, like Doodle Jump, it isn't the devs' fault. There just isn't much going on in this game, and they did the best they could with what they had. The problem with this one compared to Doodle Jump though, is that it's kind of a boring and unengaging game most of the time. I had a great time checking out these 3 games I would have never otherwise played. I never played this version of Poptropica or this version of Doodle Jump. I will say that specifically SuperSponge made me nostalgic for late 90s and early 2000s SpongeBob, so I'm gonna go watch that now. Bye!